7?
It's 7:01.
7:01. All right. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And the first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody, for coming. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of October 22nd, 2020.
Just yesterday.
They've been, you've had a chance to review them. Any questions? I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Move the second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Under new business, the reason for our meeting this evening is to review the new village zoning law and to help us understand it and present a review of it for us is Renee. So at this time, I will call on Renee to, do you want to just?
Sure. Did you want to say anything?
Oh, does the mayor want to say something first?
I just want to let you know that this was a 2-year process. It was a process where we had as much community input as was available to us, especially during COVID. We asked for public input all the way through the process, and I have to say that the planning board and the folks on that committee worked terribly hard throughout COVID, spent many hours. Renee, especially with all the extra work that she did. The consultants that we worked with were fabulous. They really helped and supported us through the whole process. So I think the document that you have on your table right now is probably the best that we can do for the Village of Bergen. It complements our comprehensive plan. It comprehends the things that folks expressed the desire to have in a zoning law. And I think that as we move forward, it's going to be a document that's going to serve us very well.
Thank you.
Yes,
Right.
here, I agree.
Okay, all right.
I agree. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of holistically how we came to this document, and then we'll go through some of the articles that will be important to understand. Like the mayor said, the committee was the planning board, trustee Kevin Donovan, who was a previous planning board chair, and the mayor attended all the meetings as long as community members, our consultants, etc. A lot of people don't completely understand that the zoning law is actually a local law. It's a local law passed by the village board. The committee was tasked, because we're closest to zoning and planning and land use, we were tasked with coming up and putting it together and then handing it off to the village board, and then the village board, if they had questions or, you know, there was a number of public hearings and public comment and things were changed, that's the process to get to this, which is a local Village of Bergen law. It was written to be user-friendly. We checked off, I don't know if any of you have read the comprehensive plan, but the comprehensive plan has action items at the end of every section. There were a number of them that were action items for the planning board, which did include looking at the zoning law, coming up with new districts. There was at least 8 to 10 action items for the planning board to take care of out of the comprehensive plan. And we were able to check off almost every box of the things that we needed to do for that. So that is a follow-up that the village board does on the comprehensive plan, and that is one of the reasons that we came to coming to a new zoning law, because things needed to be changed with the times. So the language in this document is very user-friendly. Our old zoning law had a lot of legalese, a lot of repetition, a lot of the same things. We tried to clean that up and make it very easy to pick the document up and say, okay, this is the section I need. It's broken down into 17 articles. Our old zoning law was 50. All right, tables and charts were utilized wherever possible to make it easy to just say, okay, this is me, and this is me, and this is what I've got to do. All right, areas of concern in the old zoning law were researched and addressed, along with newer areas which were not addressed in the old zoning law, leaving the village very open to some things that maybe we did not want to have here, i.e. wind, some solar, things of that nature. We felt that the old zoning law had a lot of repetition when it came to the application process. So what we did in this new zoning law was we came up with one application process for all the different types of things that you might do. A special use permit, a site plan, an appeal. It cut out a lot of language that was unnecessary. Administrative sections, Articles 10 through 17 are very specific to whatever your project is. New zoning districts were created. We're gonna spend some significant time tonight talking about the new zoning districts. It will be a searchable document on the village website. And there will be a complete revision. We're almost done with all the permits. When people come in to say they wanna do X, they wanna do an accessory dwelling unit, or they wanna have a fence. All of our permits will reference the sections in the new zoning law. So it's going to be much easier for our residents. Say I want a fence. Fence permit's gonna say you need to go to Article 5.3, and that's gonna tell you exactly what you need for your fence. We wanna make it as simple as possible for people to do projects, upgrades, you know, we wanna make it very easy for them to be able to use this document. All right. Highlights, dimensional requirements for all districts were adjusted. This is a huge, huge, huge thing that is fantastic for the village and fantastic for the residents and homeowners. We'll go over that when we get to the residential district section. New and expanded uses, which we've never had, including one that we saw last night, we'll discuss at planning board, solar and wind, accessory dwelling units, temporary storage structures are addressed, we'll talk about that. Parking, loading, landscaping, design, all of that is addressed, as well as minor and major site plan review, which a minor site plan is new to the village. So those are kind of the highlights. So if you go to Article 1 in the new zoning law, Article 1 is your basic general provisions of the local law. It includes the transitional provisions, also includes talking about previous permits, and then general legal language. It's the legalese of the document, basically. And the transitional provision is that as soon as the village board approved the document and passed the local law, it immediately went into effect, even though it has not been filed with the state. That paperwork did go to the state, but there is a lag, especially now. It is a long lag. Let's just say that there's minimal movement on things. So anything going forward after October 27th will be seen with this local law. Anything that was previously, any building permit, any special use permit, is still applicable to the old zoning law. So that is handy in the office for anybody who has a project that is, you know, out there. So that's Article 1. Article 2 starts our district. So Article 2, 3, 4, and 4 are basically our districts. So I gave you a map. I gave you an old map and a new map so you can kind of see the differences, okay? Old map's this one, new map doesn't have all the tax map numbers. As far as the residential districts, we have new district names. We had 3 old districts. We had an R1, residential 1 family, R2, residential 2 family, and R3 was a residential multifamily. We went to 2 districts. We felt like that was a little repetitive. So we have a low-density residential district, which is an LDR, and then a traditional village residential district. All right. The TVR, or the traditional village residential, is what you think of in the older part of the village. Old patterns, very grid-like, smaller lots, all in the downtown area. Mackenzie, part of Munger, part of Rochester, this area down here, part of South Lake, all of the older homes. They tend to have a smaller footprint, they tend to be much closer to the road, and they tend to be very close to one another. Part of the reason that we really looked at the residential districts were the old zoning law. So I don't know if everybody knows where I live or where Tim lives, but my house is a large house on a small lot. If my house were to burn with the old zoning law, I could not rebuild on my footprint, on my foundation. It did not meet the requirements of the old zoning law. Okay, so what we did was we broke that up and we took a significant look at the tax map and really went out to make sure that we put the square footage of the primary dwelling to meet the requirements for the TVR so that folks could rebuild if they needed to. And you'll see in the table on page 8, the minimum lot sizes for the TVR are significantly less than the LDR. It's 2-4 dimensional requirements. It's 8,000 square feet for a traditional village resident, and it's, for the LDR, it's 15,000 square feet. So that was one of the most significant things that came out of this document for residents as it pertains to their properties. Thankfully, we were able to change that before there were things that happened, honestly. It was 15,000 square feet for everyone in the old zoning law. So the LDR is more of the new development, end of Rochester Street, end of Munger Street, up in the tract where the lots are bigger, there's more yard, there's more space, houses are set back a little further. We're really happy with it. A lot of it does line up with some of the R1 and R2. If you look at as an overlay, you can kind of see that the dark yellow is now the light yellow. A lot of it lines up to be the same. So a lot of folks won't even know the difference of the two residents other than the parameters on the minimum lot size and setbacks. Nobody could have met the setbacks, nobody could have met the rear setbacks, front setbacks, so we were very happy with that. The other thing we did was, when we were looking at the residential districts, we did look at the main estates property. I'm not sure if everybody knows what that is. If you've been around, you do. It's the property that's ag right now. It's ag being farmed, but it's actually residential property. It's behind Munger Street and it's across on Parkview. We did do the LDR district closest to Munger Street so it would mirror the houses on Munger Street. I think that was an issue when Main Estates originally came for a subdivision. So it should be a very similar footprint to the Munger Street houses on the, I don't know, closer to the Rose Garden. I'm not good with directions. And then across the street would give a subdivision opportunity to do condos, you know, maybe 4 condos, a TVR, which is a smaller footprint on that. So, kind of some of our thoughts behind the residential districts. Molly and John were instrumental in looking at all the properties in the village, looking to see what they felt like our square footage should be on the TVR in particular. So that was very important. Does anybody have any questions on the residential, just basically our thought process behind the residential districts?
So, question on the
Sure.
the Parkview, so this area is traditional.
Yes, across the street.
So explain that again about why wouldn't it be under the larger lot size area?
That, okay, so what that does is it gives the developer an opportunity to put some more houses on there, put different types of houses on there. You could put a condo situation on the TVR, you couldn't do that on the
I see.
LDR.
Okay.
So what we did, we wanted to give we want to make it, we want somebody to come and build there.
Mhm.
As an LDR, I don't believe that it would give them the opportunity to be able to do some more housing You couldn't do condos, you couldn't do apartments, any of that in an LDR. It really would be single-family homes with a significant amount of land for the village. In the end, I think a developer, we'll get to a PUD, but in the end, I think a really good compromise is a PUD, a planned unit development for those two parcels. I mean, that's my own personal feeling, talking to some of the developers who've been interested in it. That's a mixed use with some commercial and some community space as well as, you know,
Right.
LDR and TBR.
If somebody came to you with a plan there, you guys would have to review it anyway as far as parcel sizes and all that stuff.
For the PUD?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, a PUD's a whole, we can talk about a PUD. A planned unit development, they would come to the planning board and they would present what they wanted. A lot of times it includes a park, I mean, there's could be a community center, there could be a bank, a medical facility, along with whatever type of housing that there was. They would have to come to us. The planning board would look at it, they would recommend it. A PUD actually is determined by the village board. So after we review it and send our recommendations, we send it to the village board. And then the village board, along with our engineer, and I mean, that's a huge,
Yep.
our engineer, everybody would have to. But before they can start a PUD, it has to be rezoned. That's why it goes to the village board. The village board rezones.
Right.
So they couldn't start anything. They would have to have a complete plan to make it a PUD.
So really what this does is sets the stage for something that's in the future, but not necessarily a bunch of small lots like you have in the village. It just sets the stage for somebody else coming, and then it gets rezoned to whatever they're gonna do.
Or somebody could buy it and make the LDR part LDR homes,
Yeah.
and make the TVR part TVR homes.
Right.
And that would not require rezoning.
Okay.
So they could start with, say they wanna do condos and then they wanna do single family homes. So, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it protects the village and keeps the integrity of our small village close. And then the TVR is kind of off a little bit, so.
That
So,
makes sense.
yeah. Anybody else have questions on residential? Okay, so let's move on to commercial. So our commercial districts, we went from 2 commercial districts to 3 commercial districts. We did the opposite in commercial. We have new and rezoned districts, a general commercial district, a neighborhood commercial district, and then the village center commercial. They replaced what used to be neighborhood commercial and central commercial. You can really see on the map what we did here. We felt like there was 2 things that really needed to be addressed. Number one, especially in light of the Main Street grant, the village area needed to be its own thing. Before it was the village area and out by 33, out by the diner and Dunkin' and all that. It was the same thing, same rules applied to both. In our eyes, we did not feel like that was appropriate. The village has its own thing, and out there is really more of a highway commercial. It's people coming through, it's you know, gas and food and that type of thing. So you'll see on the new map, the general commercial really is only Dunkin' Donuts, C-Store, Caesar's, and the restaurant. And part of, believe it or not, the self-storage is part in the town, part in the village, part in this, it's in like 4 different things. So, and then the light blue is the village commercial area. We did expand down a little bit and put the, where MHL is, I think they're currently in the industrial. We made that part of downtown because it really is part of downtown. And then you have your neighborhood commercials. This is really where a lot of the growth could come for the village. We rezoned a number of parcels and had very, very long discussions on this. We rezoned, so there is a vacant parcel right behind the C-Store. Nobody really knows that, but the same person owns that parcel. They're subdivided off a parcel behind it in the town, a subdivided off another parcel behind the LDR. there's all sorts of parcels over there that have been subdivided off. When Molly and John were going through and looking at the tax maps and looking at the town, that was very problematic for them, and they brought it to our attention, something we might not have known. But if the parcel behind that neighborhood commercial parcel is bigger, and if the town decided that they wanted to have a huge Walgreens there, and they bought both of the parcels, we could not stop them from that, okay? But because we now have that as a neighborhood commercial and have some more specific limitations on that, that can now stop that, okay? Very, very important. We also moved neighborhood commercial along Apple Tree. There is also Mrs. Baker, she subdivided off a parcel there, which she was going to sell to a company, and it fell through. So all of this could be really a nice little neighborhood commercial. Think about medical, ice cream shops, vet, any sort of, you know, smaller, any type of smaller commercial could go there around the neighborhoods. We also decided there is a 2-family home next to Ann Peters' craft store. That parcel is, if you're looking at the craft store, it's to the right, to the north. We did put that in the neighborhood commercial also. That parcel, if they ever decided to sell, could be a fantastic medical facility, dentist, anything like that, hair salon, could be a number of different things. They have parking there, plenty of parking there. So it can stay a residence, but it can also, if they ever decided to sell, it could become a business. Okay, and then obviously the Rose Garden up on Buffalo Road, that is neighborhood commercial as well. So that's pretty much, we actually are very excited about that new neighborhood commercial area. We've kind of called it ourselves like the gateway to the village. If that got developed, that really could be a nice entry into the village, so yeah, we're excited about that. Does anybody have any questions on the commercial?
There's a change that's happened, and a lot of areas are putting up the pot shop idea,
The what? Oh,
the marijuana pot.
oh yeah, they're
the
gonna be
pot shop.
discussing that at the village board meeting. So if anyone's interested in that, I don't remember the
I
date.
wanna open it.
14th,
14th, they're gonna be discussing that, actually.
15th.
It's a public hearing. So if you wanna talk about pot, you can come to the 14th.
The current, but under the new zoning law, where would that fit?
It would depend what it's called, honestly. If it's a retail store, then it could be in many different places. But there's, that's, right now, I mean, you can talk about.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of regulations and things going along with it, and every time we read some new information, there is new information, and there's new, you know, new regulations and so on. So, there are several stipulations about what we need to do by the end of the year, by the end of December. We have to make a decision by then. Hence, we have a law, we have a local law that we put together, and that's why we're having the public hearing at our next board meeting. That local law, proposed local law is out on the website, so everybody can take a look at it, see what you think. You know, any comments coming in, we can take comments until, you know, the board meeting on the 8th. So,
Yeah, I've
take a
seen
look at it.
placards in Churchville, I think, that say opt out.
Yeah, either
So-
way,
The repercussion of opting out is that we don't get funds.
right, they're talking about a tax, it's sales tax that we would get.
Of course.
So, you know, we figured out if there were 8% sales tax, the village, town, and the county would share 4%. And the county, let me get this correct, the county gets 75% of that 4%, whatever the money is, and then the village and town split the rest. So it's, who knows,
Yeah.
you know, who knows? So opting out gives you the opportunity to opt back in at some point. But if we decide that we go in now and we're going to do this, you cannot opt out. You know, so there's all these little things going on. So, yeah. So it's out there, the local law is on the website, you wanna take a look at it, the proposed local law, and then we'll have full discussion on the 8th, see what people want. It's also, up for, permissive referendum, so that if the village board votes one way or the other, and 20% of the community wants to reverse that, you can do that as well. So there's a lot involved, and it's a back and forth.
It is, it's very complicated. I would assume it would be considered a retail store. As long as all of the, again, they're, just like if you serve alcohol, I'm sure there are a number of things that you must go through.
And I know that at one of the public hearings, Ron Bailey brought up wanting to disallow adult nature.
Yeah.
And we were told we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So what zone then, if somebody wanted to, what zone would that?
We're gonna talk about that next, it's a good segue into
All
it,
right.
Tim. No, it's good.
Well, there we go.
No, I love the questions. All right, so we're gonna talk about industrial districts next. We have two new districts, the general industrial and the mixed-use light industrial. And it replaces, we had one district called industrial district in the past. Again, very problematic for the village. The general industrial district currently is only the Bondwell campus. It's only the Bondwell campus. The mixed-use light industrial is down along the railroad tracks, down Spring Street, Lawn Medic, Miller's, all of that. The reason it's problematic is because in the industrial and the old zoning law, you could have just about anything industrial. And it didn't matter if it was down along Spring Street, along everybody's residence. You could have trucking companies coming all back and forth all day, all night in the old zoning law. That didn't happen, thankfully. Thankfully, we have a light industrial business down there. But now we've protected our residents by doing that. The other thing we were able to do by segregating the Bondwell campus is we spent a very, very, very long time discussing the general industrial. We spent a long time discussing the future of that piece of property. If that piece of property ever wasn't a canning factory or a freezing factory or Bondwell or whatever it was, what was gonna happen to that property? We wanted to protect the village in that way, so we actually put a significant number of special uses. People could be permitted special uses. You have to have a special use permit, outdoor assemblies, there's a number of different things you can do over there. If you go to page 14, adult uses is one of them. So the only place you can have an adult use in the village at this time is in the general industrial district, which is currently Bondwell. If Bondwell was to go away, we felt like that was the best place to house that. It's off, it's away from the community. Obviously, I would assume that it would, be maybe subdivided up there, whatever the case. So, animal hospitals, daycares, gyms, there's a number of recreational facilities, entertainment facilities, restaurants, bars, wineries, breweries. That's what we envision up there if Bondwell was ever to not be here.
Wouldn't a marijuana store fit into that category, that it's adult only? I mean,
I do not believe it is
Okay.
Adult use. I think we talked about that.
Okay.
I do not believe it is.
No,
okay.
Yeah. So that
at
is,
this point in time.
at this point, right, I mean, it does change. We actually did not address it in here because when we wrote this, it wasn't even a thing, which is how quickly zoning laws can change. So that is where it is. We were very happy with that. And yes, we did talk to our consultants a number of times. We cannot be in it completely. So this does go with our comprehensive plan. Very happy with the new mixed use light industrial. We think that's gonna be great for the village, great for the residents. And that's the industrial districts. questions on there? No? All right. So Article 5 is by far my favorite article. I know you're not supposed to have like a favorite anything, but it's my favorite article on the whole thing. I think that Article 5 cleared a lot of things up from the old zoning law. The old zoning law was very like scattered and all over the place. People would call me and say, oh, I want to do this, and I'm like, I can't even find it. So I love Article 5. It's all additional districts and uses, all right? I'm gonna hit on a few highlights because honestly, this is where you might get some appeals. All right, first we're gonna talk about accessory dwelling units. Accessory dwelling units are a new use here in the village. We are super excited about it. We passed and approved an accessory dwelling unit last night at the planning board for Robin Day at 64 Rochester Street. She is putting an apartment in her attached, ridiculously large barn, garage, I suppose. I guess hers is a garage. She's had this very large garage and can't do anything with it for all these years.
That's Dilcher's old place.
Yes, yes. With her old zoning law, she could do nothing but make it a garage. Now she's able to put an apartment in for her elderly parents, and she can take care of them on her property. She met all the requirements. She's gonna start breaking ground in 2 weeks, and we're thrilled for her. It also opens up opportunities for people who have old barns, like myself. Tim has an old barn. There's things that you can do now. You can have you can have apartments, you can have a business, as long as you meet all the things. It gives us more ability in these old villages with these very large barns on small lots, big garages, to be able to do things that we couldn't do before. You can put an apartment. Obviously, you have to meet all the criteria, but it does open up a whole nother world, honestly, for some folks. And we're pretty excited about that. Accessory dwelling units are a very hot topic. The contractors who came to the preliminary special use permit said they're hearing about them all over. All the municipalities are adding them in. It's just happening everywhere. So, very exciting thing. So it talks about what it is. Accessory dwelling units does have to be owner occupied, just as an FYI. You can't have an accessory dwelling unit in an apartment and then rent out your barn and rent out your house, and that just is not the way it works. So you do have to live in one of the parts. You don't have to live in the house, you can live in the accessory dwelling unit, you just have to live in one of them. So that's one of the newest things. Accessory uses and structures, always something that could come to the ZBA. Gotta meet setbacks on that, there's restrictions. We have decided that the planning board should see any accessory structure that's bigger than, I can't remember what the square footage is, but anything bigger than your typical shed is going to need to come to planning board now. If you want to if you have enough room to put up a pole barn on your property and it meets all the setbacks, you're gonna have to come to planning board now. We want to make sure that all the setbacks and everything are met on something bigger than your weekend or shed, right? Did you have a question, Frank?
No,
Okay.
just,
All right, can be non-residential or residential uses in that. All right, the next special use is adult use. We kind of discussed that a little bit. There's all sorts of definitions in the back. Did want to talk about animal hospitals and veterinary clinics. There's some language in there. If that's something we want to make sure that, things were handled appropriately. Bed and breakfasts, they changed a little bit because we now have accessory dwelling units. You can have a bed and breakfast in your barn or your garage. You don't have to have it in the home anymore here in the Village of Bergen. So that's kind of cool. 5.8 talks about car washes. Car washes are like the biggest, hottest topic when it comes to the planning board, because obviously we have a very sensitive wastewater treatment plant and gray water system, so Car washes are really talked about, and there is some things that they must do for car washes to make sure we are protected as a village. Daycares and nursery schools are talked about here. Drive-throughs, we had a long conversation about drive-throughs. We were doing this in the middle of COVID, so drive-throughs were like a hot thing. And I still think that they are. We wanted to make sure we put a section in here, especially if developments go in that new neighborhood commercial section up by the gateway to the village, that drive-throughs were addressed, you know. You wanna drive through and it's a small pharmacy and you wanna pick up your prescription, we wanna make sure that that is not causing any traffic problems or problems for the neighborhood. So that's addressed here. Let's see what else we got. Fences, always. Good fences make good neighbors, I guess, because everybody put one up during COVID. I don't know. Like, we did more fence permits than we did in the last 10 years. So, fencing's discussed. There is a new fence permit now. There is a fee to it. The village board passed a new fee schedule. So if you want to put up a fence, 511 is your friend.
Are you grandfathering a lot of things that are already?
If it's already done, it's done.
Okay.
But
So
if
we're
you're
not gonna
going,
get a flood of people coming back going, well,
No.
they're changing it, we have to.
no, if you put up a new fence though, you need to come in. We did ask that people fill out a building permit and have it looked at by our code enforcement officer. There was no fee to it, just to make sure they weren't on utility easements or they weren't on putting their fence on their septic tank. But this protects the village by saying, okay, now you gotta really do a fence permit. And our code guy was spending a significant amount of time looking at people's fences for free. So, you know, it's a $25 fee, it will recoup something. It's in your file. You would not believe how many people call when they wanna sell their property and are like, is there a fence permit in there? A lot of times there aren't. So now there will be. Protects the resident, protects the village. Gas stations, gotta put a little bit of language in there for gas stations. Home occupations, you know, obviously that is something that has, with COVID, has become a real thing. A lot of people are working from home now. Just kind of discusses home occupations, gives a little more leeway to the home occupation. Multifamily dwellings, has to be discussed. Just gives the parameters. It's good for somebody looking to put in something. I think multifamily is considered 3 or more units. Outdoor assembly, seating, sales, display, and storage areas. Really one of the most noteworthy things in here is assembly seating and seating in the public right of way. If anybody here on the main street now, if they wanna sit outside, they do have to get permission from the village board. We wanna make sure that, we wanna give them the opportunity to increase their space, it's safer, especially with COVID, there was a lot of eating outside. They now come to the village board and present what they'd like to do, and the village board will, you know, write them a letter and let them know if that's acceptable. So that is in number B1. Talking about storage areas, pretty standard stuff, we just kind of spelled it out. Same thing, really all these littler recreation and entertainment, it just kind of spells a few things they can and can't do if you're looking to do this type of thing. Restaurant and tavern, talks about liquor licensing, waste management plans, all those things have to be on the site plan. Just gives anybody who's trying to do anything just a little more information. Telecommunications equipment, that is all legal lingo that has to be in there, to be perfectly honest. It's very long. The only place that anybody could put telecommunications equipment in the village of Bergen, other than where it already is, would be on the main estate's property. And I don't think that anybody would do that since there's one literally across the street. So, but it has to be in here. Temporary storage structures. This is a new section and something new that a lot of municipalities are going to. We will start with this probably more in the spring now that all construction season is wrapping up. Temporary storage structures, if you have a roll-off, a pod, any of those types of things, and you're in a residential district, you have to register them with the village. There's a number of reasons why. One, for safety, most importantly. A lot of people are putting roll-offs where people can't see when they're walking, people are driving, walking, kids, dogs, and you can't see past the roll-off. So they'll just be registered with the village to make sure. Then number two, it's a 30-day registration. You can re-register it, but that the roll-off doesn't sit there for, 7, 8, 9, 12, 2 years. So that's new. It's not if you're commercial and doing construction, and obviously if your contractor's coming in for a building permit, they're gonna register, they're gonna say that, this is something that you're cleaning out the house, or you're doing your roof, or whatever the case, which you would need a roof permit now for, but whatever the case, to make sure that we're all safe. And that the village looks nice. Wineries, breweries, distilleries, same kind of blurb as restaurants, vehicle sales, and that is additional districts.
I think you can see how much time and thought is gone into
Oh,
this.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, Fritz?
About the towers. like,
Yes.
There are 2 towers which I'm right in between,
Hmm.
and it affects my radio signals.
Okay.
I don't think there's any real consideration can be made for that.
That would be,
I mean,
Mr. Dale
location of
question,
the
I would assume.
towers,
I
I don't know.
don't know. Yeah, I don't.
and I think there's a tower in here somewhere too. Or is
Well, we
that
have
the
the
one I'm
we have the
thinking
tower in Heartland Park. We have the tower in Heartland Park, but that's the only tower we have
Yeah.
on the village properties.
And that impacts your radio?
about? Yeah, I have to change the
Yeah.
tuning all the time. And it's not a big deal, I just wanted to ask in case they
Yeah.
brought in some high-powered thing.
That is,
Yeah, that's interesting.
well, really, I mean, most everything's going to 5G now, and that's on our poles. That's on our poles, and we have a 5G local law that addresses that. A very sophisticated 5G local law to protect the village.
So the tower on the sledding hill there are what, 5 units on there right now? Do you recall?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
somebody either
And they-
just went on or off, I can't remember.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
that's paid to the village, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay,
That is revenue into the village.
all right, so, and does that just go into like a general fund, or is that
Yes.
designated to anything?
No,
Just
it
kind
goes
of
into
general
general
fund,
fund, yeah.
All right,
Where's
Now-
the sliding hill?
Sliding Hill,
Yeah.
Heartland Park.
Heartland Park.
the one at the top of the hill there, where the old water tower used to be.
Mhm.
That's our sledding. And so, let's say as they start to subtract from there, maybe move it over to, across the way there, will we lose revenue from that then? If they say, we're gonna pull off and
If they
go,
pull off, we do.
Yeah.
we start losing revenue?
Mhm.
I don't know that they will though.
I mean, they've been there for
Yeah.
ever,
Yeah.
you know. But the other piece, the 5G and all the
Mhm.
work that was done there with the local laws was
Yeah.
really important to us because we were in danger of having them able to connect anywhere.
Oh,
And, the federal government wasn't gonna allow that to happen, so this local law that was put in place
Mhm.
protects the village.
And there were deadlines, like there were deadlines, you had to do your local law by X, or that you couldn't do it. And we have some fantastic attorneys in Buffalo who we
Yes.
work with, who put together a very sound law. So, yeah, additional, just Article 5, so awesome. PUD we kind of talked about already, so just a couple more things on PUD. It's permits greater flexibility, more creative, imaginative design, utilizes land development techniques, provides for both individual building sites and common property. PUDs can be no less than 2 acres. you can't do a PUD on an acre. It's really from conventional zoning, permitted uses are included, and, what's great about them for small villages is, in a PUD, you can get another park, which they usually then hand over to the village, so that's always nice.
That's how Heartland was put in, Heartland development and then property was
Yeah.
given to the village.
So that's Article 6 talks about PUD. Article 7, I'm not really gonna go into a lot of detail, I'm just gonna give you a couple of the highlights. It's off-street parking, loading, driveways, and accessibility. It's basically driving, walking. What this really does is, we had a very long conversation about parking lots. A lot of the local parking lots are not what we would like to see. What we'd like to see in parking lots is it broken up, have a little green. Think about the Presbyterian church parking lot with the trees in the middle. That's what this does. It makes it a little friendlier, kind of breaks things up, makes the traffic pattern a little better. Proper circulation, adequate parking, talks about minimum parking spaces for different businesses. One thing to note, the village commercial, this area down here, no longer has any parking restrictions. Before, when the laundromat opened, we had to count up the spaces in the municipal lots, and then count all the businesses and all of the apartments to make sure that there was enough spaces for everybody. Well, that's kind of silly, because the people who live in the apartments aren't here during the day, mostly they're working, and the people who are in the apartments are here at night, and the businesses are closed. So it's a lot of sharing, that's where all of this form-based zoning comes in. So there's no need to have any sort of restrictions on how many parking spaces you need if you want to open a laundromat downtown. There's plenty. So that is one thing, no minimum requirement. We also discussed loading. Loading is a giant issue in the village of Bergen. People will offload anywhere. They'll offload, park the wrong way on Main Street, they'll offload over here, they'll offload in the middle of the C-store, they'll offload anywhere. If you have new construction, if you come for a site plan of any sort, you wanna do something new, say, the Bergen Family Restaurant wants to come for a site plan, they're gonna have to look at their loading when they come. That's one of the things they're gonna have to do. If anybody down here comes for a site plan, they're gonna have to look at loading. Loading is a problem, and we're gonna try to fix it with this new zoning law. There has to be a designated loading area. Talks about the design requirements. There's no parking in the front yards of any residential or commercial businesses. Even multifamilies, you can't park in the front yard anymore. It was in the old zoning law, also. What that is doing is prohibiting parking lots or driveways in your front lawn. It's keeping the green space in the small village, basically. If they ever get started at 83 South Lake, the old, where they made sauce and where the old pasta restaurant was, the Italian restaurant, they did not have to adhere to it, but they agreed that they are going to take the parking out and make that a lawn in front of it. And it will be dramatic for the village, just that.
That will be.
So, there's a discussion about access management and driveways. There's a table with minimum and maximum requirements if you're putting a new driveway in. We do now have a driveway permit. Let's see, I don't know what page that's on, but it discusses what needs to happen. Driveway permits are nothing new. Almost every municipality has it. Why we didn't have it, I don't know, but now we do. So if you are paving your driveway from stone to paving, you're gonna have to come for a driveway permit. It's not expensive, but we're just gonna make sure you're meeting all the requirements. If you have a shared driveway, you're going to have to sign a shared driveway agreement. If you do any work to your driveway,
So if you put a turnaround extension in, you have to do the same thing?
yes, yeah. Again, utilities, setbacks, lot lines, covering yourselves, especially with a shared driveway agreement. We also, I think that everybody has heard or seen, there's the commercial vehicles and the recreational vehicles, page 55 and 56. Just, parking on that. And that's pretty much, parking, loading, driveways, and accessibility.
Let's talk about the RV thing.
Uh-huh.
Let's say, there's a lot of people in my neighborhood there
Uh-huh.
in Heartland. Let's say they're 6 feet in front of their garage. They got it alongside, but it's sticking out, like Randy Hill. Okay. All right, so if he gets cited and he comes to us, are we gonna, where do we go with that? Do we have to abide by the hard law and say, no, you gotta move it that 6 feet more, or, where are we gonna be with that?
We can talk about that because there's a whole section on
Okay.
how to handle that, actually.
Great.
That's a fantastic, question.
All right,
Yep, that's a fantastic question. That, we'll get to that in the end,
okay.
okay? Article 8, I'm not really even gonna go over it. It's landscaping and screening for commercial developments. We are very happy with it. Basically, they have to come with a landscaping plan. If you're doing something minor, we're not gonna ask you to go out and find a landscaping, somebody who has all these credentials. But if you're gonna do a big project here in the Village of Bergen, we want a landscaping plan. And this is gonna tell you what you need to do for that. So that's Article 8. Same with the non-residential design, I'm not gonna go over that, these are for large projects, these are what we're looking for, it's going to make, whatever building, everybody's seen it, the Pizza Hut building, or it's going to look like it belongs in an old village, basically. So that's 9. Article 10 is what I kind of discussed at the beginning, when we were talking about how we had a ton of duplication in the old zoning law. This is your general application procedure. This is what you're gonna need to do if you need to apply for a site plan, a special use permit, whatever it's gonna be. These are the things that you need to do. It's very specific, it's very easy to follow. And it just gives you, what do you need to submit? How is it accepted? All the things. One of the, who's reviewing it, talks about seeker, basically. All the legal stuff, we have to issue a decision within 62 days, all of that's in here. One of the things we did add in here, which we are very excited about, is you would not believe how many people come to the planning board and don't understand when you have to refer it to the Genesee County Planning Board. Why would you? Because it's not anywhere. Right? It doesn't say it anywhere. So we put in a whole section on when you have to refer it to the Genesee County Planning Board. And believe it or not, there is not many properties in this village that you don't have to. Within 500 feet of a county, state road, another municipality, and it's almost every single thing we've seen has to be referred to the county. So it gives you the exact information. There's 6 different things, that reasons to refer. So you can just look it up here if you're looking. Talks about how it's approved, etc. And then public hearings and notices. We are very diligent about our public hearings. I don't know if the ZBA has had to even have a public hearing in a long time, but it's very specific as to what needs to be done. Lays it all out here. The applicant has to pay $75. Barb will put it in the paper. Has to be in the paper in a certain amount of time. It's all laid out. You also have to mail letters to people within 500 feet of the property. Now we'll be posting. We posted on Robin Day's property. You have to post the public hearing on the property. All of that is explained here. All right. So the applicant is aware of all that and what their $75 goes to. Okay, Article 11 is site plan review. We were real guinea pigs on the site plan review. Site plan review is a big deal, especially if it's a major one. We decided as a village that we are going to have a minor site plan and a major site plan. Site plan does not have to have a public hearing. It is up to the board whether they wanna have a public hearing or not. So we decided that we were going to do minor site plans for minor businesses, minor things that would come to us. It's all laid out here in this table. It's the first time that they ever did a table. So, it's very exciting.
Groundbreaking.
It was groundbreaking. A minor site plan would maybe be, for example, BA's photography studio. She sells the building after her time is up with Main Street Grant, and somebody wants to come in and they wanna put in, a hair salon. So it's a change of use, so it would need to come. They're changing the footprint. But it's fairly minor. There's parking. It's not really gonna affect the front of the building. That would be considered a minor site plan. The planning board would not require as much information. We don't need detailed surveys. We don't need, to spend a significant amount of time. Just give us the basics. It's a fairly simple and straightforward. Major site plan, we want stamp drawings, possibly landscaping. There's a lot of things that would go into it that need to be looked at. Utilities, maybe our attorney needs to get involved. That's a major site plan. We're gonna require a public hearing for all major site plans, in the Village of Bergen now. Minor site plans, they don't need a public hearing. Nobody really is going to even notice if it goes from, other than the sign, goes from a photography studio to a hair salon. So that's really site plan. There's a lot of things in here. Solar energy systems are going to, any solar in the village, the only solar that is permissible is solar on buildings, on the roofs of buildings. That will also require a site plan, a minor site plan, so they do have to come. No ground solar in the village. Wind is not allowed anywhere in the village. It just kind of goes application, process, same type of thing. So, anybody have any questions on site plan? Special use permits do require a public hearing, always. That's why we had the public hearing last night for the special use permit for the accessory dwelling unit. When you go back to Articles 2, 3, and 4, all the different districts, the table will tell you whether it's a permitted use, an SP, or not applicable at all. So it's very simple. You just go, I'm in the neighborhood commercial, I want to put in a winery, you go over, okay, I need a special use permit. Again, it goes through basically what you would need. Article 13 is more about PUD, just how it works. We already talked about it. Planning board sees the site plan, we make a recommendation to the village, then there's a rezoning that would happen if it's accepted. Okay, Article 14. This is all you guys, a lot of you guys. So Article 14 talks about the rezoning that the village does. And it also talks about appeals and variances, which is what you guys see. You were talking about, how do you take a hard look at an appeal? Well, it actually gives you the criteria that you must look at. Okay, it's all laid out. On page 95, it talks about a use variance criteria. It says the ZBA shall not grant a use variance without the applicant having shown all of these things. So when you guys get an appeal, you literally would have to go through every one of these steps. The applicant cannot realize a reasonable return provided the lack of return is substantial as demonstrated by competent financial evidence. So it's on the applicant to prove that they can't meet the zoning law. And if they can't, then you have to say that it's enough, right?
And if they cause, as I remember, we did Tom Sardou's sign, that was the last one we did.
Yes.
And if the person caused the problem, then that's really not something we can argue with, if you're the cause of the problem. So,
Right.
back back to an RV.
Yeah.
If the cause of the problem is I've got a fence here that I put there, then I'm causing the problem, right? So we can't consider that as part of a problem that we have to say, well, then we're gonna grant it. We can't grant it because he's the one that put the fence there that caused the problem that he can't put the camper back further.
Yeah, I mean, you would, if it meets all of these criteria,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. I'm just trying to avoid,
Yeah, no,
trying to understand where we
Yes.
have grounds to stand on,
Yes.
you know?
Yes, it's a very specific criteria. And the other thing too is, you know, yeah, I kind of, I'll give this to the mayor too. If you have an appeal and you feel like you need the attorney here, we've had our attorney here. Our attorney is a good resource
Yes.
for these types of things.
Yeah.
Very knowledgeable. He helps because it's just, I understand it's a small community, right? It's a small community, there are neighbors. To have our attorney here is very helpful.
Now, is that Mark Borland?
Yes.
Okay, because he was here for the Tom Sardu thing.
Yep.
And Tom, of course, was showing everybody all these pictures of what Churchville has coming from Churchville
Right.
toward Bergen. And Mark just cut him off and said, look, the point here is, how are you not violating the sign ordinance?
Right.
And, you know, his showing everybody pictures and stuff had nothing to do with that. So
Yes.
Mark was smart enough to cut it off and say,
Yes.
you know, you're not proving your point.
Yes. I didn't realize Mark was here. It wasn't at the hearing,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so
It
that
was very good.
he is a very good resource.
Yeah.
Any attorney is a very good resource because they are very specific. Either you created the hardship or you didn't. It's
Right.
very black and white.
Right.
It's not as much of a gray on an appeal.
Okay.
There's not as much leeway as there would be saying, us seeing a special use permit at the planning board where there's, you know, you can go like this.
Mhm.
You can't really at an appeal.
Yes, okay. As it turned out, his appeal went to Genesee County and they said, done deal, so we didn't have to do anything more.
Right, right.
Renee, before you go,
yeah,
I don't know if this belongs here, but does that sign that the craft store put out, it seems rather bright, does that fall within the signage and lighting?
It was pre-existing non-conforming before the
I
sign
had
law.
never seen it on before.
It's on sometimes and sometimes it isn't from what I gather, you know, it's a
I
good
saw it, I
Yeah.
said, what, you know, it was, boom.
Yeah. Well, now that we have this, which allowed our new sign law to go into effect, now we'll have to start taking a look at some of
Yeah.
those things and
Yeah,
follow up
that's
on them.
grandfathered anyways.
Mhm.
And some of them have a certain amount of time where they have to conform, so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's something that has to be looked at.
Mhm. But page 95 and 96 are going to be like your best friends.
Yes,
Because those are the criteria for either an area variance or a use variance that you would have to go through.
and don't ever hesitate to request to have the attorney here.
Yeah.
If you feel that's something that's gonna be necessary,
Yeah.
that happens for you.
Important, especially at this level. I mean, you're you're the end.
Yeah.
So.
I've been told that before.
All right, anybody have any questions on that? Article 15 just discusses the reviewing bodies. It talks about the village board, talks about, you know, how many members on the planning board, how many members on the ZBA. It's, you know, a lot of legal, what we do, how many members, how long our membership is. And then number 16 is our code enforcement section. This is obvious, I'm not sure if everybody knows Gary Accessory, but he's our code enforcement officer. Talks about his duties, talks about stop work orders, building permits. We spell out demolition permits. We do have a demolition permit for the safety of everyone. Violations, certificate of occupancy, your general code and building. Talks about consultant fees if you do need to bring in if we need to bring in the engineer, if we need to bring in a landscaping person, you know, it's on the applicant to pay for that, it spells that out. Also talks about it actually on the permits. So, and then Article 17 is definitions, so that's quite long, but It's just the definitions if you ever needed to refer to them. We decided to put them in the back as opposed to the front, where it was in the old zoning law. I'm not sure if any of you noticed, but I noticed, we asked them to increase the font size. We were pretty happy about that. That's why it's so long, because the font size is bigger. A little easier to read for those of us, and
And it made a difference, it
it
truly
did.
did.
It really did. So that's kind of a snapshot. Like I said, we did a little deep dive into some of the things that you might see and some of the new stuff. So, you know, if you have anybody have any just general questions, any questions on it?
Very, very nice job.
You guys did a great job. I know it took a long time and
Yeah.
some hardships and all, but
Yeah.
very good.
The document as a whole is absolutely phenomenal for the village. It protects the village, it protects the residents, it's going to enhance growth, it gives opportunity for growth where we didn't have it before. You know, I think we're just all thrilled with the document. You know, I know there were a few little bumps in the road, but the document holistically is just really, really fantastic for the village. Fantastic for any applicant who wants to come in. We're gonna be doing, we've kind of taught, we're trying to figure out the best way to let everyone know that there's a new zoning law. I mean, obviously this affects everyone. If you wanna put up a fence, there's new regulations. We also wanna reach out to the contractors, obviously, and let them know, especially anybody, Thompson Builds, Low Key, Dilcher, anybody local who does a lot of work in the area. Obviously, we worked with one of the contractors on the accessory dwelling unit, so they're aware of the new zoning law. They like it. So that'll be our next thing, is to try to push that out to everybody.
Yeah, you know,
Any other
interesting.
questions or comments?
The contractors are really important because of that. I mean, we had a fence going in and they did not, nobody understood about the
Yeah.
fact that they needed a permit or anything like that, so that created an issue.
Mhm.
So we wanna make sure that everybody knows. We're gonna meet with the town also
Okay.
and review
Mhm.
with the zoning board and the planning board and make sure that everybody is updated on what our zoning law looks like, and hopefully we'll get information from them and share so that we have all of that. But I think you can see how all those little things needed to be put in place to
Yeah.
protect the village, to make it safe, you know, and to keep the character of the village, which is pretty important to all of us, so. They did a great job.
Well, Renee, I want to thank you very much for helping us and with this
Sure.
review. It was very informative.
Yeah, I hope so. I could talk about this all day and like plan. But I try to just, you know, concise. There's a lot to it.
Can we go back to Article 5 for a moment?
Yeah, we can go back to
Just
our,
kidding.
I can talk about Article 5 all day too.
You picked your favorite part.
I know.
So, okay, well, there was a lot to digest.
You got a question?
You got a question?
No, I was just
Oh.
teasing because she likes it so much.
I really
Your
do.
voice
I thought
changing
you were
everything.
serious.
Your voice changing everything during Article 5.
I love Article 5.
Very good. Well, thank you. I'm glad we did this and appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Just a note to the board. We've been sent a notice on webinar training. There's been some training sessions coming up. They're all good. I would highly recommend though that whoever can, it's at 10 in the morning, so whoever can take it. The ethics for ZBA is an important one. There are ethical standards that need to be followed. Myself going through an ethics training at the county, there are things you can innocently do that you get trapped into violation or an ethics. So this would help you avoid conflicts. You could have conflicts of interest. Hey, if we make a decision, we could be challenged, and if a developer wants to hire an attorney or somebody they can challenge the decision we make. And one of the things they would look at is potential conflicts of interest and ethics violations. So this would help avoid that. You can easily, if you have an establishment or a business and you're friends with the person, or you have a relative that works at the establishment, or you eat at the restaurant regularly, is that a grounds for you to recuse yourself? When should you recuse yourself? And it just helps you not get into innocently a situation where you got a conflict of interest. So it's a very good webinar. The other one is planning and zoning hot topics. The ethics one is, as you know, is Thursday, December 9th. The planning and zoning hot topics and case law. Excellent training. You get into court decisions, and some of the hot topics that's facing zoning boards throughout the state of New York. So if you can take that one in, I would highly recommend it. Plus, we just got notice that we're hosting the webinars here at the village, so you can come to the village and take part, or in your own home if you can't make it to the village. But highly recommend at least those two, as many of us
No,
can
75.
take it in.
Coffee and donuts, did you say?
I don't know, Chris. Maybe.
Barb will sneak it in.
Bar works are magic all the time.
The second one you brought up after the ethics one, when is that?
It's called Planning and Zoning Hot Topics.
When is that?
That is Tuesday, December the 14th at 10 o'clock. And these are just an hour, they go from 10 to 11.
In 2 weeks, you can get your 4 hours in, actually, if you go to all of them.
Sure.
And there's training credits you can gain from those two. Okay, anybody else have anything else to bring up? All right, that being the case, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Move, second by Tim. All those in favor say aye. Meeting
Aye.
adjourned, thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice, thank you.
Of course. If you look through it and you have any other questions, stop down.